Up next, our next discussion, okay, that's going to be a panel. We have Mr. Wissam Adany, the Group Chief Information Officer of GB Auto, who will be the moderator. The panel discussion is going to be on mapping between on-premises security, compliance rules, and cloud ones. So yes, Wissam, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Naveen. Thank you. As we all know, cloud technology has been in the market for years, but since the pandemic, it has emerged back to the surface as one of the major technologies that can help organizations to survive and grow during this period. On the other hand, we read everyday news about hacking large corporates, data, and stealing information. So it's really critical these days. Today, with the assistance of our panelist guests, we will try to shed some lights on the cloud technology, focusing on one of the main points that has been under discussion for years, the security aspect of moving to cloud. But first, let me welcome our panel members and start alphabetically with Mr. Khaled AlKhalifa, the project director at Bahrain Supreme Council of Health. Mr. Khaled had almost 20 years of experience in healthcare IT, working at the Royal Medical Services and King Hamad University Hospital. Welcome, Khaled. We have also Mr. Mohammed Viqaruddin. He is the cloud solution architect at IGA, the Information and E-Government Authority in Bahrain. Mohammed has a long experience in data security and cloud solution design. Welcome, Mohammed. And finally, we have Mr. Nigel Hawthorn, EMEA Marketing Director at McAfee. Nigel has many articles about data protection, privacy, user behavior, and cloud security. Also, he published a book called GDPR, an action guide for IT. Welcome, everyone. So let me first start by asking Mohammed. Mohammed, in your opinion, what are the main design aspects that should be considered while taking a decision to move to cloud?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for asking a great question. Thanks to give me a platform to share about your question. The designing aspect about the cloud, as an architect, I need to see the existing workload. Then I have to propose the solution based on the architecture design, which consists how the network access, security, operations, tagging, backup, DNS migration, migration validation, cost estimation, and migration task. These are the overall I have to consider as an architect, all those things. Now the architecture I have to give, like most, I have to consider on the security aspect. Some of the instances in terms of AWS, the servers, I have to make them as much as security I can. If required public, then I have to put in the architecture to the public. If some of them, they required their infrastructure to be secure, so I will make them in the private zone, and one I keep in the public. As of now, we are all in public. Everywhere, public accessing, anywhere to anywhere access. In that scenario, I need to protect my information. For that, I will not take my data directly to the public. So as design, I will make a load balancer which can, as a outsider, will not feel directly to my host, so they will see the load balancer. This is how overall I will do the architect about the design of my consideration for moving a cloud from on-prem to the cloud. Thank you, and back to you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mohammed, for your answer. Actually, it shed plenty of lights about the design, and you showed that it has nothing to do with where are you hosting. It's all about the design, and it's really important to have the proper design before moving to cloud in order to secure your data. Thank you. So let's move to another direction or different aspect, or see it from a different point of view. So Nigel, today, many countries and vertical market regulators seems to be creating new laws and regulations on a regular basis. How do you see this impacting the use of cloud?
Thank you very much for the time today. What we're seeing is that, as you say, lots of countries, lots of vertical market regulators are putting together new laws and regulations. Let's remember, at their core, they're there to help us. They're there to try to make sure that we're doing the right thing for our employees, for our data, and for our customers. So they should be embraced. The good news, I think, is that many of the laws are now coming from a similar core point of view. If you look at data protection, for instance, individuals' data now is seen by most regulators as belonging to the individual. And then if you have that data, it's on loan to you. You need to treat it as a very valuable commodity, as you would if you were to borrow somebody's car, for instance. Now, the thing with cloud is that, unfortunately, people outside IT often think that the cloud provider provide all of the security. Oh, it's okay, we don't need to worry about these regulations because it's now all the responsibility of the cloud provider. Where I like to look at it is it's a bit like buying a car. You buy a car that is well designed, that has airbags and it has seatbelts. It's still your responsibility to put those seatbelts on and to drive it in a safe way. With the cloud, it's good to use all the security that cloud companies have, but you've also got to realize, what are my users doing with the cloud? What are the features that are there? And here we are using Zoom. Different versions of Zoom allow different things. Sometimes they allow us to share files. Sometimes they allow recording. What if I've got a file that I share with all of you? Is that okay? What's in that file? We should recognize that using the cloud might not be safe. Even a safe car can unfortunately be driven dangerously.
Interesting. But just let me add a small question. How about this kind of regulation? You know that cloud is something that's worldwide use. So you might be having Azure, AWS, whatever, it exists in Europe, US, while the users in the Middle East or in Africa and different countries. So how these kind of regulations, you see that it will apply on everyone and everyone will agree on it. So how you see it from your point of view? How long it's going to take to be stabilized? And
well, in the last few weeks, I've spoken at events for South Africa, for Ghana, and for Nigeria. They've all got new regulations around data protection, new or certainly new that they're being enforced. But if you look at them, really, they are often starting from the leadership that the EU created with their initial data protection directive many years ago, 1996, I think it was, and the GDPR that came out a few years ago. So the good news is that actually, if you start looking at regulations and building it from a point of view of one regulation, you'll probably find that it conforms to many others. There's another one, for instance, that about 6 months ago, the Dubai International Finance Center issued its regulations about data in the cloud. And again, it's very much the same principles. So the good news really is that if you look at all of these and try to set the principle that you don't own that data, it belongs to the individual, you really will be going a long way ahead in your movement towards making sure that cloud use is safe and secure.
Interesting. Thank you. Sheikh Khaled, taking design aspects mentioned by Mohammed, as well as the new direction to create new laws and regulation highlighted by Nigel, can you just give us some examples of cloud-based projects done within the healthcare field and how moving to cloud helped the healthcare system in Bahrain?
Certainly. Thank you, Wissam. I think healthcare has really benefited vastly from the availability of cloud computing. And I think with the pandemic, we have seen the need to be able to reach out to the patients and connect them to the healthcare system, whether it's telemedicine, remote monitoring of patients after hospitalization. So there is a lot of functionality in healthcare for that is allowed through or has been accelerated by both the cloud computing as well as the current pandemic has actually pushed us to adopt things like mobile health, like healthcare on the edge. So I think just to go back to what Nigel said regarding the data is now owned by the patient, I think this is the whole idea is to really provide control with the patient on that, on the data, and the data is residing with us as a custodian. And this is, I think, by moving to the cloud, we solve part of the problem. But with healthcare, the issue is that the information is so dispersed and is received from different parts of our network, whether it's mobile devices, whether it's machines connected to the patient and the hospital system itself. So I think having such a diverse ecosystem with the healthcare is really unique. I'll just go back to one example we have in Bahrain. We are deploying a health exchange portal or health information exchange portal. And this using cloud allows us to simplify this implementation of the electronic health record by simplifying the connectivity between those entities, the integration, managing the security. I think these are advantages, although they create other challenges, but there are many advantages that we have seen by going through the cloud option for this specific solution. Thank you.
Interesting. I see Bahrain is doing plenty of effort these days, actually, and moving very fast in this direction. It's really nice to hear this. Thank you. Back to Mohammed. Do you think it's possible to achieve a secure cloud environment? And what could be done to reach this either on-prem or cloud?
Thank you, Mr. Wissam, for asking a great question for this today's session. Yes, can be secure, but follow certain standard controls. I will talk about CIS control is a set of 20 controls and is having 171 subcontrols that can create an idea having a list of something to implement so that organization can increase their security on premises and the cloud. I will give you some set of controls which any organization has to follow, like inventory of authorized and unauthorized device access, secure configuration of hardware and software, continuous vulnerability assessment and remediation, control use of administrative privileges, maintenance and monitoring, analyze audit logs, email and web browser protections, malware defense, limitation and control of network ports, protocols, and services. And lastly, data recovery capabilities. These are the standards CIS controls if you followed, and there are some sub-control as well. So if you will focus on, now I want to make secure through all layers. So in the layers, you can protect on the network layer, not to share your all ports of information Like sometime I have noticed while everyone in the cloud, they make like any to any. So in that one, what happened? You are giving a channel, opening a door for everyone. Please come inside. Instead of this one, you apply controls. You make a document, make sure you follow the standards which can be audited not by yourself, audited by someone else. So it will protect and give you the certificate. Yes, you are secure. So this is what I would like to say about you have to follow the controls from CIS. It will be give you much value to your on-prem, same applicable to the cloud. Thank you, and back to you, Mr. Wissam.
Actually, what you have just said, it popped up a question in my mind. That most of the people believe that moving to the cloud, the first benefit they will have is moving all the controls and security to the provider, and they are out of it. But what you have mentioned makes me feel like it's not only the job of the vendor. There's still parts for the customer as well as the architect like you to do, and job has to be done in-house in order to make sure that you have a secure cloud. Is it correct?
Thank you, Mr. Wissam. As I mentioned, as you see, all the cloud providers, they have their own responsibility, plus customer responsibility. And if you are using platform as a service, there are some certain rules to be applied for you and the vendor or as an individual. Similarly, if you use software as a service, there also you have some control. You are having some responsibility and provider having some responsibility. At the end, if you are looking for a secure and more robust your solution, you must be analyzed not only one, but across all the boundaries and make protect yourself, not feel by yourself, yes, I am protected. I don't protect, I'm not vulnerable to anyone. But instead of this one, you take the third party, analyze your network, in terms of software, in terms of configuration, in terms of security vulnerability. Make sure your server or EC2 instances not having vulnerability. Now we are saying, okay, we are cloud providers saying, yes, it's secure in their physical environment. But while you come for the responsibility, you as a owner of your server, your responsibility ensure your EC2 instances patch up to date. You're saying I'm secure, but I'm not protecting on this one. And you are keeping your instance on the public, and you're saying I'm secure, directly attacked. So you keep some control on the follow some standard. And thank you, and back to you.
Thank
Mr.
you. Thank you. Nigel, being or actually working from at McAfee, which is one of the largest companies in data security and protection and all these things. It's well-known company actually. So it looks like we should be careful when reviewing which clouds our user access. Would you say that there are any clouds that are perfectly safe?
Perfectly safe. No, there are no clouds that are perfectly safe, just like it's not perfectly safe to cross the road. You know, I think that Mohammed gave some great examples there of the security measures that you need to put in to ensure the configuration is safe. And yet the configuration isn't everything. And I think the other thing is many of the things that are easiest to do can be done just by IT on their own. But actually the difficult stuff, you need to work with other members of the organization. So you need to talk to governance, risk and compliance. You need to talk to legal, the lines of business. You need to talk to DevOps, anyone who's using these systems. And what I think you need to do is start having workshops internally with people from outside IT and come up with a scenario and say, here's a scenario, is this okay? Mohammed shares a document with Nigel. Nigel doesn't work for the same organization and it has in it 10 phone numbers and email addresses. Is that okay? If it is okay, can Nigel edit that? Can Nigel download it? And is that okay? And so you start asking these very specific questions, because once you do that, then all of a sudden the non-IT people understand a bit more about what you're saying, and they say, oh, okay, so right, that's interesting. That's much much narrower actually than the general, is the cloud safe? It's a specific example. And the quick example I often use is I say to people, have you got children? If you've got children, do they ask you, can I go to a party? And what's your answer? And usually as a parent, the answer isn't yes or no. The answer is lots of other questions. Where's the party? When's the party? When does it start? When does it finish? Who's hosting it? Etc. etc. And again, I think we need to do the same with cloud. It's not just, is the cloud safe, but am I using the cloud in a safe way? And the more you can bring in other departments, the better your answers will be. And I really think it's up to us as IT professionals to explain to the non-IT people, this is how it can be used. Please help me define the rules. You can buy technology from us or anyone else that will help you put in security around cloud, but there's no point in buying it until you've worked out what you need to do. So here I am working for a vendor saying, don't buy my product. Don't buy my product today, maybe sometime in the future, once you've worked with and decided inside the organization what policies you need, what systems you want to use. And then obviously the cloud can be very safe. And the great news is that cloud providers provide some low-level security that you need, but you still have to put on top of it the security that you really want.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, after we have just listened to the point of view from actually the opinion from the point of view of architects and a vendor side, Sheikh Khaled, can you tell us more about how you manage the security aspects and challenges that you faced within your current projects that move to cloud? Do you mainly rely on the cloud provider, or you have your own solutions as well to maintain this kind of security?
Yes, Wissam, I think definitely there are challenges. The biggest challenge is actually taking that first step. I think we're accustomed to how we are doing things, and change is always a big step. Saying that, I think we kind of have specific challenges within the healthcare. Specifically, we looked at the problem of how to move imaging systems and how to secure them on the cloud, and reduce that bandwidth requirements. So these were some of the challenges that we are facing at the moment, and looking at how to re-engineer these processes. Similarly, we are also looking at the application of the personal data protection law of Bahrain, and how this is evolving, and how those regulations that are going to change, how are we going to maintain them? And I think this brings us to the second part of your question, is that how are we dealing with all of this? And what we're doing is basically maintaining a stakeholder matrix of responsibilities. It might not cover out of IT, as Nigel said. I think it's important to extend that. We haven't been there yet, but I think as IT teams, we have different responsibilities, or different parties that are involved, including IGA, Mohammed's team there, and the IGA. We have got vendors that we are working with. We've got the cloud. We've got the cloud provider. So we've just tailored, or we've listed those responsibilities and who's doing what, because our issue is we're missing a part, and this allows a gap in our security policies. So that's how far we've reached and how we are managing it.
Interesting, thank you. I think that we have like a couple of minutes to go. So just let me ask one question, and I would like to hear it from all of you from different point of views, just in 1 minute for each one. So it's, if you have the option to give a final advice to decision makers, either within the organization or regulation authorities to help increasing the cloud adoption? What would you say, Mohammed? What would you say to these people?
As discussing with the other panelists about their telling their opinion and their story, for adoption of the cloud, first we have to see the feasibility, ensure you really change from your on-prem to the cloud or one cloud provider to another cloud provider. Adoption of cloud, personally, I felt is more effective in terms of price, in terms of maintenance, in terms of overall looking out the physical infrastructure. It will save a lot. The problem in the long run, if you buy a huge infrastructure and after some time you feel like where to move these things. If it is there in the cloud, so provider is taking caring all those things, you protecting only your data, what exactly you are looking. So this is what I would like to say. The adoption of the cloud is feasible in the current context and the scenario, and it will easy for us not only for growing data, like some provider has mentioned, you not to worry about changing or making a hardware, a new hardware, or increasing the space or increasing the your EC2 instances. They are all giving like automation. As a process, if I want to procure or buy a hardware or software or storage, I need to follow some procedure. Might be it's a proper way, but it will time consume. While you are on the cloud, if you have some credits, you instantly use it and it will be ready for you, the solution. Thank you, and back to you, Mr. Wissam.
Thank you. Nigel, to whom you are going to address your advice and what it will be?
Well, I think Mohammed used the word visibility, and actually, I think we have to go back to first principles. We have to look at where's our data, where are we collecting it, where are we storing it, both on premises or in the cloud. And we do need visibility. You can't control what you don't know. How many cloud services are we using? Which ones are they? Do we trust them? Have they been set up correctly? So really, actually, again, it is not rushing into technology for technology's sake, but you need to categorize your data, you need to list your data, and actually you need to work out what's really valuable to you. And of course, with the example that Sheikh Khaled used of health data, that's probably the most valuable data that you could have, and much more important to me than my financial data, for instance. I can't change my health data. I can change my credit card, that's okay. So I think you need to look at where your data is and what's most valuable to you as an organization first. Where are your users going in the cloud today? Where do you want them to go in the future? And we should go carefully into the cloud. It's a great place to be. There's all sorts of benefits. We've heard about them all morning, but let's make sure that we're doing it properly, with rigor, and as I said earlier, bring in the rest of the organization.
Thank you. Thank you. Sheikh Khaled, I think we have 1 minute for your advice. So please tell us.
Yeah, I'll keep it quick. I think we've seen recently a lot of attacks on hospital systems. So I think this kind of pushes us to look at how to effectively secure our systems. We have the first cloud policy in Bahrain, which helps the adoption. So I will send my message to the developers of the systems. I think that we need to make sure that our systems are cloud ready. I think this is very important in order to really utilize the cloud in a more efficient way. So I think this is what we are looking at. This is what we need to focus on, and to make it really successful, we need to focus on this point. Thank you.
Thank you. I really wish we could continue longer, but I think we're running out of time. Finally, I would like to thank all of our panel speakers today for such informative discussion. Thank you all. Back to you, Naveen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wissam. It was indeed a discussion which, of course, everyone were, you know, quite interested in tuning into. And of course, we do have a few questions, and of course, because of the time restrictions, we cannot share it here. We will put that across onto you via email or via the WhatsApp. So yes, thank you so much there, and yes, and the other panelists as well, Sheikh Khaled AlKhalifa and Mr. Nigel, Mr. Mohammed Viqaruddin. Thank you so much for joining in today. Yes,